Roses have always reminded me of my marriage to Finley, especially the ones that are starting to fade. Still beautiful from a distance, but up close you can already see the petals losing their freshness, curling around the edges and becoming brittle. I was just cutting them in the shop, preparing a new bouquet for the window, when the phone rang. Eden Flower Shop, how may I help you? I pressed the receiver to my ear as I continued to work with the pruners. Vera, it's Dexter. Listen, Zoe and I won't be able to make it to dinner tonight. I put the pruning shears down. Again. What's wrong? I asked, trying to hide my disappointment. No, it's just that Zoe signed Willow up for extra ballet lessons. You know, the competition is coming up. I knew it was an excuse. Zoe just didn't want to see me. From the day I dared to express my opinion on how she was raising my granddaughter, a black cat ran between us. Okay, some other time, I replied dryly. Say hi to your dad, Dexter said before hanging up. I turned back to the roses. 38 years of marriage, 38 long years with Finley. I used to look at him with such admiration, a tall, handsome engineer with clear eyes and a confident smile. He came to our town to work at a new telecommunication station. At the time, it seemed to me that he knew everything in the world. Now these memories only bring a bitter smile. I remembered our home in those early years, a small apartment on the outskirts of Sedona, where we slept on a mattress on the floor because we had no money for a bed. How we laughed when the roof leaked when it rained and put pots and pans to collect water. How we planned the future while sitting on the balcony overlooking the red rocks. Finley said then that one day we would look at these same rocks from the windows of our own house. And he kept his word. After 10 years of hard work, we bought a house on the hill. But something changed when our dreams started to come true. When stability appeared, a cold gap between us also appeared. Now we rarely talk anymore. Finley is always either at the computer or in the garage with his radio parts. I try to fill the void with flowers. I grow them in the garden, bring them home from the store. He used to joke that I would turn our house into a greenhouse. Now he doesn't even notice the new plants. Are you coming for lunch, Vera? Brooke, my coworker and my only close friend in town, peeked through the shop door. I brought my famous quinoa salad. Sure, I smiled, taking off my work apron. We sat down at a table in the back room. Brooke is 15 years younger than me, but she understands me better than anyone. She's also been through a divorce and knows what it's like to feel like your life is passing you by. Dexter canceled dinner again, I said, picking at my salad with my fork. Zoe? Brooke asked, even though she already knew the answer. Who else? She still can't forgive me for what happened at Willow's birthday party. What did you expect? You told her in front of all the guests that she was putting too much pressure on the kid with those clubs. Because it's true, I put my fork down. Willow is only 8 years old, and she's already taking ballet, swimming, piano, and French. What kind of childhood is that? I just said that when Dexter was her age, he played outside more with his friends. You know, Brooke sipped her tea. Sometimes the truth isn't the best thing to say, especially in front of strangers. I sighed. Maybe she was right. But I was annoyed by the way Zoe tried to mold Willow into some kind of prodigy without asking what the child wanted. Now I only see my grandchildren on major holidays, and even then, if I'm lucky, my hand involuntarily clenched into a fist. He says I have to respect their parents' decisions and not interfere. What else can he say? Dexter is his son. His son, but my blood runs in his veins too. I carried him. I gave birth to him. I nurtured him. And now this woman who came into our lives 10 years ago decides when I can see my own grandchildren. I felt tears welling up in my eyes and quickly turned away to the window. I hate crying, especially in public. You know what's worse? I continued in a quieter voice. Finley doesn't understand why I'm so upset. He says I'm exaggerating and that I should leave the kids alone. Like I'm some kind of hysterical person, not a grandmother who just wants to be a part of her grandchildren's lives. Brooke reached out and squeezed my hand. I understand, Vera. I really do. As I went back to work, I couldn't help but think about how things had changed. Finley and I used to be partners, consulting on every decision. Now he just brushes me off like I'm an annoying fly, especially when it comes to Dexter and his family. The last time I tried to talk to him about Zoe, he just got up and left the room. I'm not going to discuss this, he said as he walked away, as if my opinion was worthless. And this was after I had devoted my whole life to him, given up my career as a designer so that he could develop and so that I could take care of Dexter. I remember one day Zoe came to us with little Willow. The girl was only 5 years old, and she wanted to draw a picture. I took out the sketchbook and paints I always kept for such occasions. But Zoe suddenly intervened. Willow doesn't draw with paints, only with crayons. Paints are too dirty. I tried to argue that it's good for a child to experiment with different materials, but Zoe just took the paints away. We know what's best for our child, she said. And Finley? He just sat next to me and kept quiet. That night we had a fight. You didn't even stand up for me, I shouted. Why should I have? He replied calmly. They're the parents. It's up to them. That was the first time I felt that I was standing alone against everyone. The shop was empty in the evening, and I began to prepare to close. As I sorted through the flowers that needed to be taken home because they no longer looked fresh enough to sell, I thought about what was waiting for me at home. Finley would most likely be in the garage with his radios. He'll come out for dinner, we'll have a few words about the weather or the news, and then he'll go back to his studies. And I will sit alone in the kitchen, watching TV and waiting for the time to go to bed. Sometimes I ask myself when exactly we became strangers. Did it happen gradually, imperceptibly, like aging? Was there a specific moment when something broke between us? Perhaps when Dexter left for college and we suddenly found ourselves face to face, without a child to fill the silence with his stories and problems. I remembered the weekend last month when Finley and I went to the lake, the first time we'd been away together in a long time. He spent the whole day with a fishing rod, and I read a book under an umbrella. He never once looked in my direction, never asked if I was comfortable or if I wanted anything. In the evening, we returned home, and he said, "We had a good time, didn't we?" And I nodded, although I wanted to scream inside, "What time? We didn't even talk." After closing the shop, I walked slowly to the bus stop. Everything around me was in bloom. May is a beautiful time in Sedona. Tourists crowded around the souvenir shops, taking pictures of the red rocks, which seemed even brighter in the setting sun. A young couple walked ahead of me, holding hands. The girl was telling something emotionally, and the boy was listening attentively, kissing her temple from time to time. I looked away. Finley and I used to walk like this. The bus took me almost all the way home. As I walked up the hill to our house, I noticed that the garage door was open. Finley was home. "I'm home," I called out, opening the door. There was no answer. I went into the kitchen, put my bag down, and saw a note on the fridge. "Gone to Warren's. I'll be back late. Dinner is in the microwave. F." Typical. Warren is a friend of his from college, a fellow radio amateur. Once a week, they would get together either at our place or Warren's to discuss their antennas and frequencies. I pulled out a container from the microwave, lasagna that I had made yesterday. He hadn't even bothered to heat it up for me. I sat down at the table with the plate and looked out the window tiredly. Our kitchen offered a magnificent view of the red rocks. Finley had kept his promise. We really do look at them from our own home. But was it worth it? A phone call interrupted my thoughts. It was Brooke. "How are you?" she asked. "Fine," I answered automatically. "Home alone. Finley went to a friend's house." "Again?" She sounded sympathetic. "Listen, why don't you join Aiden and me? We're going to watch that new garden show. I know you'll like it." I hesitated. On the one hand, the prospect of spending another evening alone was not inspiring. On the other hand, I felt awkward intruding on their evening. "Thanks, but I'd rather rest. It's been a long day." "Are you sure? We'd love to see you. Next time, okay?" After the call, I washed the dishes and went into the living room. Our house was beautiful, spacious, bright, with large windows and wooden furniture that we had chosen together many years ago. There were pictures on the walls: our wedding, baby Dexter, family vacations, Dexter's graduation, his wedding to Zoe, newborn Willow, our family history in frames. I stopped in front of the photo from our silver anniversary, 10 years ago. We are standing hugging, in front of the same red rocks. I'm in a blue dress, my hair still dark, no gray hair. Finley is in a suit with the tie I gave him. We are smiling. Were we happy that day? Or were we just playing roles? I sat down in the chair and picked up the photo album on the table. Flipping through the pages, I saw how we had grown apart over the years. In the early photos, we are always together holding hands, hugging each other, looking at each other with love. In later ones, we stand apart, often with Dexter between us. And in the newest ones, one of us is often absent because someone has to take the pictures. Lately, we haven't been taking pictures together at all. I have selfies with Brooke, with clients, with flowers on my phone, but not a single one with Finley in the last year. I remembered our last serious conversation. It was after Christmas dinner, when Dexter, Zoe, and Willow had finally left. I was clearing the table and Finley was watching TV. Have you noticed how Zoe has been ignoring me all night? I asked, clattering my plates louder than necessary. Are you starting again? He sighed, not taking his eyes off the screen. I'm just asking if you've noticed how your daughter-in-law is treating your wife. Vera, you're being overly dramatic. Zoe's just tired. She's got a lot on her plate with Willow. Tired? I put the stack of plates on the table so hard that the top one almost slipped. She's talked to every guest but me. She interrupted me 3 times when I tried to tell her about the new varieties of roses. She didn't even thank me for the gift I bought for Willow. Finley finally turned to me. You bought her an encyclopedia of flowers. She's in 2nd grade, Vera. What's she supposed to do with an encyclopedia? Read. To educate herself. To know something other than these stupid dances and French words she doesn't even understand. That's why Zoe doesn't want you to see Willow too much. He stood up, always criticizing, always trying to control everything. Those words hit me like a slap in the face. So now it's my fault? It's my fault for wanting to be a part of my granddaughter's life? No, Vera. You are to blame for not respecting boundaries. You don't respect other people's choices. You don't respect me. He took his jacket and headed for the door. Where are you going? I'm going for a walk. I need some fresh air. He returned 3 hours later. We never talked about it again, as well as about many other things that remained unspoken between us. I closed the album and put it back. I looked at the clock. It was only 9 in the evening, but it felt like it was already after midnight. Another lonely evening in a house full of memories. Another night next to a man who had long since become a stranger. I went to the window and stared at the stars appearing over the red rocks for a long time. Finley and I had once dreamed of spending our old age here, watching this view together. Now I was standing alone, and he probably hadn't thought about those dreams in years. When I went to bed, I thought about how our marriage now resembles the wilting roses I cut today at the shop. They were still beautiful from the outside, but up close you could see that life was leaving them, petal by petal. Saturday promised to be hot. I woke up before Finley, as usual. He was still asleep, sprawled out on his side of the bed. We had once slept cuddled together, but now we could put another person between us. I got up quietly so as not to wake him up, although sometimes it seemed that even the sound of thunder would not wake him up when he did not want to wake up. I like the mornings when the house is still quiet and the light is soft and golden. I went to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and waited for the water to get warm. While undressing, I noticed that I needed to change my towels. I opened the locker and took out clean ones. That's when I noticed it. A long blonde hair on the wall of the shower stall. I froze. My hair is dark with gray hair, but definitely not blonde. Finley's is dark too, though he's almost completely gray. I slowly reached out and took a hair with 2 fingers. It was blonde, almost platinum. Thin and long, obviously female. I felt my heart start to beat faster. Who was in our shower? Who was this woman whose hair was left on the wall of the cabin? I stood there naked and confused with the hair between my fingers when I heard Finley stirring in the bedroom. I quickly tucked the hair into a box of cotton swabs and got in the shower. The water was too hot, but I barely noticed. There was only one question in my mind. Who is she? When I came out of the bathroom, Finley was no longer in the bedroom. I heard him fussing in the kitchen. He doesn't usually make breakfast, especially on weekends. Good morning, he said as I walked into the kitchen. I made coffee. I looked at him, trying to see something that would give him away. Some sign, some confirmation of my suspicions. But he looked as he always did, a little tired, with his graying hair tousled, wearing an old t-shirt and housepants. Thanks. I took the cup he held out. What are you planning for today? Warren invited me to help with the new antenna. I might stay until the evening. Warren again. Always Warren when you need an excuse. I took a sip of my coffee and tried to keep my voice calm. Where are you going to install it? On his roof. Finley avoided my gaze, stirring the sugar in his cup in concentration. You know he has great reception on the other side of the hill. I'd known Warren for 30 years. His house was on the other side of town, and there was no hill. That's a lie. Why would he lie? Of course, I forced a smile. Give him my regards. After breakfast, Finley went to get dressed, and I cleaned the kitchen, mechanically wiping the countertop for the 10th time. My mind was working feverishly. I was almost certain that he was going to meet her, the one whose hair I had found in the shower. But who was she? And when was she here? I was working almost every day. He could have easily brought her while I was out. When Finley left, I immediately rushed to the closet with his clothes. I checked the pockets of his pants and jackets. Nothing. Then I looked under the bed, where he sometimes hid gifts for the holidays. It was empty. I checked his nightstand, flipped open the book he was reading. There was nothing. Finally, I went into his office. Finley didn't like it when I cleaned there. He said he had his own filing system and I would mess everything up. Now I understood why. On the table were papers with bills, old magazines about radio engineering, and several screwdrivers. I carefully opened the drawers one by one. In the third one, I found a small notebook. I flipped through a few pages, records of radio frequencies, notes on parts to be bought. And then, on the last page, there was a phone number. Just numbers, no name. Next to it was the time, 15:30. I copied the number to my phone, but I didn't dare call. What would I say if someone answered? Hi, this is Finley's wife. Are you sleeping with my husband? Ridiculous. I put the notebook back and left the office, trying to leave everything exactly as it was. I spent the rest of the day in the garden, aggressively weeding and trimming branches. Physical activity helped me not to think, but as soon as I stopped, my thoughts returned. Who is she? Was she young? Is she beautiful? What does she have that I don't? I looked down at my hands, cut by rose thorns and rough from working the land. Finley had once said that he loved my hands, that they created beauty. When did he stop thinking that? In the evening, Brooke called. How are you? She asked. I hesitated. Should I tell her about the hair in the shower? About the suspicions? But if I was wrong, it would be awkward. And if I'm not wrong, then what? Fine, I finally answered. I've been working in the garden. And you? Aiden and I went to that new restaurant by the lake. You have to book a week in advance, can you imagine? But it's worth it. You should have gone with Finley. Yeah, maybe. I tried to picture Finley and me in a romantic restaurant. The last time we had eaten out was about 5 years ago, on his birthday. Listen, Brooke. I stopped talking, not knowing how to ask. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm just tired. I'll talk to you tomorrow, okay? It was dark when Finley got home. He smelled like street air and perfume. I sniffed as he passed me in the living room. Yes, that's right. A woman's perfume. Light, floral. How did it go with Warren? I asked, trying to make my voice sound normal. Good, he replied, not looking at me. I managed to set up the reception. I'm hungry. Do you have anything for dinner? There's a stew in the oven. He nodded and went to the bathroom. I heard him turn on the shower. He's washing off her smell, I thought. The next morning, I woke up determined to find out the truth. When Finley went to the garage, I picked up his phone, which he had left on the nightstand. The screen was locked, but I knew the password, Dexter's date of birth. At least it had been the password before. I tried it. It didn't work. I tried our wedding date. Also no. Finally, I entered Willow's date of birth and the phone unlocked. I quickly checked his messages. Nothing suspicious. Calls, several to Warren, to Dexter, to the radio store. I was about to put the phone back when I noticed the recently deleted contacts. I opened the list with trembling fingers. One contact had been deleted last night. No name, just a number. The same one I had found in my notebook. Now I had no doubt. Finley was cheating on me. with someone who has blonde hair and a slight floral scent, with someone whose number he hides and deletes. Over the next week, I became a real detective. When Finley said he was going to Warren's, I would call there an hour later, asking if I could speak to the man. "He's not here, Vera," Warren would answer, confused. I began to follow Finley, recording when he left and returned. I noticed small changes. A new shirt that I hadn't seen before. He started wearing cologne that had been unused for years. He started taking more showers. One evening, I heard him talking quietly to someone on the phone in the garage. "Yes, I can make it tomorrow," he whispered. "At 2 o'clock, as usual." "No, she's at work at that time, don't worry." I was shaking with anger. He doesn't even hesitate to use my work schedule to meet with his mistress. And I, stupid, all this time thought that our marriage had just cooled down, that this was normal for couples who had lived together for so many years. The next day, I told Brooke I wasn't feeling well and left work at 1 o'clock. I hid my car a few blocks away and walked to the back door. The house was quiet. I cautiously walked into the living room and froze when I heard a woman laughing from the kitchen. My heart was pounding so hard that I was afraid they would hear it. "Grandpa, can I have some more ice cream?" a child's voice said. "Grandpa?" I jumped in surprise. I peeked out the door and saw Finley standing by the refrigerator and Willow! My granddaughter was sitting at the kitchen table, eating ice cream and talking to my husband. There was no blonde woman around. I stepped back, trying to understand what was happening. I quietly left the house and walked quickly to my car. All the way back to the store, I was thinking, why is Willow in our house when her mother forbade her to see me? And why didn't Finley tell me she was coming? "You were quick." Brooke was surprised when I got back to the store. "Are you feeling better?" "Yeah, just a little headache," I lied. I couldn't tell her what I had seen. I needed time to think about it. Maybe it was a one-time visit? Maybe Dexter had asked Finley to watch Willow while he and Zoe went out. But why in secret? And why didn't Finley tell me? 2 days later, I found the hairs in the shower again. This time, there were more of them, a few blonde hairs at the bottom of the stall. I stood there and looked at them, feeling my rage grow. So this is not a one-time visit. It meant she was regularly coming to our house using our shower. And then I noticed something else. There was an empty bottle of baby shampoo in the trash under the sink. The same one we used to wash little Dexter with. I took it out and read the label. Gentle shampoo for children, no tears. A bottle of Finley's shampoo stood next to it in my locker. A big blue bottle for men's hair. The pieces of the puzzle began to come together in my head. Hair in the shower, baby shampoo, secret meetings. It wasn't my mistress. It was Willow. My own granddaughter, whom my sister-in-law forbade me to see but allowed me to see Finley. I sat on the edge of the tub, bottle in hand. Why didn't Finley tell me? Why was he secretly meeting with Willow behind my back? Did he really think I would have objected to these meetings? I would have loved to see my granddaughter. But then I remembered the last fight I had with Zoe. Her words, "You will not see Willow again until you learn to respect our parenting rules." I remembered how Dexter took her side, and how Finley hadn't said anything, hadn't defended me. Now he was secretly seeing Willow. Zoe must have let him, but not me. They all conspired against me, my husband, my son, my daughter-in-law. They decided that I was not worthy to be a part of my granddaughter's life, and Finley didn't have the courage to tell me the truth. Anger filled me, hot and all-encompassing. I squeezed the bottle so hard that the plastic crackled. They had no right to do this to me. They had no right to take my granddaughter away from me. They had no right to lie and twist behind my back. That night, I hardly slept. I lay next to Finley, listening to his calm breathing, and thought about revenge. What price should he pay for this betrayal? What will make him feel the pain I feel? In the morning, I went to the pharmacy and looked at the shelves of cosmetics for a long time. Finally, my eyes landed on a bottle of hair removal cream. "Effectively removes hair in 15 minutes, the label promised. I took it in my hands and read the composition. "May I help you?" the pharmacist asked. "No, thanks, I'm just looking," I replied, putting the bottle in the basket. She nodded and walked away. I added a few more small items to the basket so that the purchase would not look suspicious and went to the checkout. When I got home, I went straight to the bathroom. I took Finley's shampoo out of the cabinet and opened it. It was just a regular men's shampoo with a menthol scent. I poured half of it into another container and hid it in my locker. Then I opened the hair removal cream and carefully poured it into the shampoo bottle. The color was almost identical, and the smell of the cream was interrupted by the shampoo's flavors. I added a little water to make the consistency similar and mixed it well. I closed the bottle and put it back. Now all I had to do was wait. When Finley takes a shower with this shampoo, he will finally understand what it feels like to be betrayed. He will feel what it is like to have something hidden from you. Maybe when he is left without hair, he will finally appreciate my feelings. I threw the empty bottle of hair removal cream into the trash can outside so Finley wouldn't find it. Walking back to the house, I felt strangely calm. The plan was ready. Revenge was inevitable. Now I just had to wait for the moment when Finley decided to wash his hair. In the morning, I woke up with a strange feeling, a mixture of fear and evil pleasure. Finley was still asleep, and I decided not to wake him. It was Saturday, the day he usually took a shower later, after breakfast. I quietly slipped out of bed and went to the kitchen to make coffee. My hands shook as I poured the ground coffee into the filter. What exactly will happen when Finley uses the shampoo? The cream should take effect in 15 minutes, according to the package. Will he notice anything when he washes his hair? Will he feel a burning sensation, suspect something is wrong? Or will it happen later, when the hair starts falling out in strands? I heard him getting up, his slippers scuffing on the bedroom floor, the bathroom door opening. I froze, listening. Here he is opening the shower door. There is the sound of water. The shampoo lid clicks shut. Time seemed to stretch like a rubber band. Every second dragged on endlessly. I didn't even notice that I was holding my breath until my lungs burned from lack of air. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Finley was still in the shower. The water was running incessantly. 20 minutes. Something was wrong. He had never spent so much time in the bathroom. And then I heard it. A loud, piercing scream that shook me to the bone. It was followed by the sound of a fall, then a crash, like something hitting the bathroom floor. Finley? I rushed into the bathroom. Finley, what happened? The door was locked from the inside. I pounded on it, trying to shout over the sound of the water that kept coming. Finley, open the door. Are you okay? Finally, the lock clicked and the door swung open. Finley stood before me, a towel around his hips, soaking wet, with a look of terror on his face like I'd never seen before. And his head? Oh my God, his head. Most of the hair was gone, leaving uneven patches of bare skin that was already red and looked irritated. There were still strands at the back of his head, but even they seemed thin and weakened, ready to fall out at the slightest touch. What? What happened to my hair? He wheezed, looking at me with wide eyes. Vera, look, it's just falling out. He ran his hand over his head, and a handful of gray strands remained in his palm. I took a step back, suddenly feeling weak in the knees. I don't know. My voice sounded unconvincing even to me. Maybe it's some kind of allergic reaction? You use the same shampoo as always, right? Yes, of course. He looked confused and scared. The same one that's in the shower. Oh my God, what's going on? I need to see a doctor. I need to see a doctor now. Finley rushed into the bedroom, leaving wet footprints behind him. I was left standing at the bathroom door, feeling numb. It was more than I expected. The cream had worked harder than I thought it would. Finley's face, his panic, all of it was burned into my memory. And instead of feeling satisfied, I felt only disgusted with myself. What had I done? While Finley was getting dressed, I walked into the bathroom and saw a horrible picture hair everywhere. On the floor of the shower, in the drain, on the towel he threw. And the bottle of shampoo that I had replaced was there, looking innocent on the shelf. I quickly grabbed it and hid it under the sink, replacing it with the original shampoo I had left behind just in case. I'm taking you to the hospital, I said, as Finley came out of the bedroom, pulling his baseball cap over his mangled head. Give me 5 minutes to get dressed. We spent almost 4 hours at the hospital. First, an endless wait in the waiting room, then a doctor's examination, then a consultation with a dermatologist who was called in on purpose. All this time, Finley sat in silence, clutching the brim of his baseball cap with his white fingers. It's a chemical burn, the dermatologist finally said after examining Finley's scalp. Are you sure you haven't used any new products? Maybe hair dye? Hair removal cream? I felt the blood drain from my face. Finley shook his head. No, nothing like that. Just my regular shampoo. That's strange. It looks very much like a depilatory reaction. Maybe the shampoo was contaminated? Do you have the package with you? No, I answered quickly. We left it at home. That's a pity. I'd like to check the composition. The doctor sighed. Well, in any case, I'll prescribe you an ointment to relieve inflammation and a bandage to protect the skin. Unfortunately, you won't get your hair back. You'll have to wait until it grows back. And I recommend throwing away all the hygiene products you've been using. Perhaps the problem is contamination. On the way home, Finley still looked stunned. He was sitting in the passenger seat, occasionally touching his head through his baseball cap, as if he couldn't believe his hair was really gone. I'm sorry, I said, trying to make my voice sound sincere. I don't understand how this could happen. Neither do I, he replied quietly. No shampoo should do this. At home, Finley immediately went to the bathroom to throw all the bottles off the shelves. I followed him, watching him dump one product after another into a trash bag. When he reached for the baby shampoo, I couldn't resist. Where did this one come from? I asked, even though I knew the answer. Finley froze, holding the small bottle in his hand. It's for Willow, he answered after a pause. She comes over sometimes. She comes over? I tried to control my voice. When did my granddaughter start coming over, and why don't I know about it? Finley turned to me slowly, his face tired but his eyes hard. She comes when you're not home. Zoe said she could see me, but not you. I'm sorry, Faith. I felt the anger boiling up again, eclipsing the guilt over his head. How long has this been going on? I gritted out. A few months. So you've all been going behind my back. You, Dexter, Zoe. You all decided that I wasn't worthy to see my own granddaughter? No one decided that, Finley sighed. Zoe just set a condition. It was either me or none of us. I figured I'd take some of us over none of us. And didn't you think I missed her too? Tears came to his eyes. Didn't you think I was hurt? I did. But I was hoping that over time, everything would settle down and Zoe would change her mind. In the meantime, I wanted at least one of us to have a connection with our granddaughter. And that's why you lied to me? Is that why you secretly brought her over when I was at work? Finley remained silent, his head down. Suddenly, everything made sense. Wait, I looked at him more closely. You've been using the same shampoo for 20 years. You've never had any problems. Suddenly your hair is falling out right around the time I find out about Willow? His eyes widened as he finally realized. You did this on purpose? You switched my shampoo? Now it was my turn to be silent. Vera, look me in the eye and tell me you didn't do it. His voice trembled with tension. I thought you were cheating on me, I exploded. I found blonde hair in the shower. You came home smelling like women's perfume. You were constantly lying about where you were and what you were doing. So you decided to pay me back by making me bald? Disbelief and anger mixed in his voice. My God, Vera, what happened to you? I could have gotten serious burns. I didn't think it would be that bad, I mumbled. I just wanted you to feel the pain. The same pain that I feel. What pain? The pain of someone trying to keep in touch with your granddaughter despite the ban? The pain of betrayal! I was almost screaming now. My own husband who secretly meets with my granddaughter and does not tell me about it. My son who allows his wife to separate me from my grandchildren. My daughter-in-law who thinks I'm not a good enough grandmother. Finley looked at me, and I saw something new in his eyes, not just anger or disappointment, but real terror. I'm going to call Dexter, he said finally. He needs to know what happened. Don't you dare! I tried to intercept his hand as he reached for the phone. This is between us. No, Vera. This is between all of us. And if you can do this to me, who knows what you can do to Willow? The words hit me like a slap in the face. You think I'd hurt my own granddaughter? Finley didn't answer, but his silence spoke louder than any words. He dialed Dexter's number and said briefly, Come over, right away, with Zoe. We need to talk. While we waited for them to arrive, the house was in an oppressive silence. Finley sat in the living room, still wearing the baseball cap that now seemed absurd within the four walls of our home. I stood by the window, feeling the ground slipping from under my feet. Everything was falling apart. Everything I had built over the years was crumbling before my eyes. When Dexter and Zoe finally arrived, I barely recognized my own son. He looked older and tougher than I remembered. Zoe was standing next to him, holding his hand as if to protect him from me. "What's wrong?" Dexter asked, looking from Finley to me. "Dad, why are you wearing a hat at home?" Finley silently took off his baseball cap, revealing his mangled head. Zoe screamed, covering her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God, what happened to you?" Dexter came closer, looking at the bald spots and reddened skin. "Your mother happened," Finley replied calmly. "She switched my shampoo for hair removal cream." "What?" Dexter turned to me with a look of complete incomprehension. "Mom, is that true?" I remained silent, feeling tears streaming down my cheeks. "Why?" Dexter sounded not just surprised, but horrified. "Why did you do it?" "She thought I was cheating on her," Finley explained. "She found some blonde hair in the shower and thought I was having an affair. But it was Willow's hair, your daughter Dexter, who used to come over sometimes when Vera wasn't home." "You let Willow come here?" Zoe turned to Finley with indignation. "We agreed that she would meet you at our house." "I know," Finley said, shaking his head. "But Willow asked. She wanted to see her room we'd prepared for her. She wanted to play in the garden." "So you all lied to me," I finally found the strength to speak. "All of you. You hid my own granddaughter from me. After what you did to Dad, I'm not sure you're not a monster." Dexter looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time. "How could you, Mom? He's your husband, and you're my family," I screamed. "And you all betrayed me. You took Willow away from me. You lied to me for months. What was I supposed to do?" "Not that," Zoe shook her head. "I always said there was something wrong with you. I always felt you were dangerous. And now you've proven it." "Dangerous?" I laughed bitterly. "A woman who has been an exemplary wife and mother for 30 years? And you took my granddaughter away from me because I dared to disagree with you about her upbringing. Who's the real danger here?" Finley stood up. "This has gone too far. Vera, what you did was unacceptable. I can't live with a man who's capable of that." "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling panic grip me. "Right now. You can keep the house. I don't need it." "Finley, wait." "No, Mom," Dexter interrupted. "Dad's right. And not only that, we're taking Willow away from you forever. No more visits, no more meetings. I'm not risking my child's safety." "You can't!" I lunged for him, but Zoe stepped between us. "She's my granddaughter. She's our daughter," Zoe was adamant. "And we decide who she can talk to. And after that," she nodded toward Finley's head, "I don't even want to think about what you could do to her if she pissed you off." "I would never." "We don't know what you're capable of," Dexter interrupted. "And we don't want to find out. Dad, get your stuff together. You can stay with us until you find an apartment." Finley nodded and went into the bedroom. I was left standing in the middle of the living room, feeling the world crumble around me. "Please," I whispered, "don't do this." But their faces remained unwavering. They had already made up their minds. When Finley returned with the suitcase, I tried one last time. "Finley, we can talk about this. I was wrong, I know. But 38 years? It's not just a mistake, Vera," he said, not looking at me. "It's a betrayal. The worst kind of betrayal possible. You betrayed my trust, my safety. I can't trust you anymore." And they left, all three of them, leaving me alone in a house that suddenly felt too big and too empty. The next few days were a blur. I didn't leave the house, didn't answer the phone. Brooke came several times, knocked on the door, but I didn't open it. I couldn't see anyone. I couldn't explain to anyone what had happened. But the news spread anyway. In a small town like Sedona, secrets don't last long. At first, it was the looks when I finally decided to go out to the store. People looked at me with a mixture of horror and curiosity. Then whispers behind my back. "It's her, the woman who made her husband bald. Can you believe she switched shampoo for hair removal cream?" And all because he was secretly dating their granddaughter. They say she's always been a little strange. Brooke met me at the flower shop with a serious expression on her face. "We have to talk," she said, taking me to the back room. I know you heard. I slumped down on a chair tiredly. Everyone has heard. Vera, is it true? Did you really do that to Finley? I nodded silently, unable to look her in the eye. Oh, Faith, Brooke sighed. Why? Why didn't you come to me if you were so hurt? Why didn't you talk to me? I don't know, I whispered. I just broke down. All the pain, all the lies. I couldn't take it anymore. The store owner called, Brooke said after a pause. He thinks you should take some time off. For a while. Am I getting fired? I looked up at her. No, not yet. But people are talking, Vera. The clients don't want to be served by a woman who, well, you know. A woman who made her husband bald. I finished for her. That's all I've become. Give it time. Brooke squeezed my hand. People will forget. It'll get better. But I knew it wouldn't. At least not anytime soon. And not the way it had been. That evening, as I walked home, I could feel the eyes of the neighbors on me. Mrs. Patterson, who lived across the street and used to always invite me to tea, now hurriedly came inside as soon as she saw me. Mr. Johnson, who was mowing the lawn, did not even look up to greet me. I became an outcast in my own town, a woman who was feared and judged. And all because of one terrible mistake, one moment of weakness, when pain overcame reason. As I entered the empty house, the phone rang. It was Dexter. Finley filed for divorce, he said without introducing himself. I was silent, not knowing what to say. And there's something else, he continued. Zoe and I are moving to Phoenix. I've got a new job and we've decided it's the best thing for everyone. You're running away from me, was not the question. We're starting a new life, he replied. And I think you should too. Goodbye, Mom. He hung up the phone, and I was left standing in the middle of the kitchen, holding the phone, which was making short beeps. Goodbye, Mom. Just like that. As if everything that had happened between us meant nothing. As if 38 years of marriage, raising a son, creating a family, all of this could be simply wiped out with one act. I went out on the terrace and looked at the red rocks, which now seemed dark and menacing in the setting sun. This was the view Finley and I had dreamed of when we were young. This house we built together. This family we had created. It was all crumbling before my eyes, crumbling like sand between my fingers. And the worst part was that I couldn't blame anyone but myself. The divorce papers came exactly a week later, just like Dexter said they would. The brown envelope with the official seals was sitting on my desk, and I didn't dare open it for a whole day. Finally, after drinking a glass of wine for courage, I tore the envelope open. Dry legal phrases, terms, clauses, 38 years of marriage, reduced to a few sheets of paper. Finley listed irreconcilable differences as the reason. Nowhere was there any mention of hair removal cream, but we both knew what was behind those streamlined words. The first days after they left, I spent as if in a fog. I walked from room to room, sometimes stopping and forgetting where I was going. For hours, I looked out the window at the red rocks, which now seemed to be mute witnesses to my collapse. The phone rang, but I didn't answer it. The mailbox was filling up, but I didn't check it. The world around me continued to spin, but I was frozen in the moment when everything collapsed. 2 weeks later, Brooke came to visit. She didn't knock. She just used the spare key I'd given her years ago. Oh my God, Vera! Her eyes widened when she saw me. Have you eaten anything? I shrugged. Food hadn't interested me for a long time. You have to pull yourself together, she said, looking around the mess in the living room. You can't live like this. How can you live? I finally looked at her. Not everything. Brooke sat down next to me on the couch. You have a home. You have a job if you ever want to come back. You have me. A job, I laughed bitterly. Do you really think anyone would want to buy flowers from a woman who made her husband bald? The whole town knows, Brooke. Not everyone is on his side, she said quietly. There are people who understand. People who know how hard it's been for you. Really? I didn't believe her. Well, not everyone supports what you did, but a lot of people think Finley and Dexter were wrong too. They had no right to keep Willow from you. I nodded, feeling the tears well up again. Willow, my granddaughter whom I may never see again. My son who disowned me. My husband, my ex-husband who couldn't forgive me. I got a subpoena, I said, nodding at the envelope. Divorce and property division. What does he want? Nothing. He says I can keep the house and everything in it. He's only taking his personal belongings and half of his savings. Well, that's fair. Brooke looked surprised. I thought he'd demand more. Finley was always fair. I wiped away my tears. Even when he hated me. He doesn't hate you, Faith. You didn't see his eyes. Back in the bathroom when he realized what I'd done. It wasn't just anger, it was disgust. Like I'd become something vile. Brooke was silent, not knowing what to say. I understood her. What can you say to a woman who has destroyed her own life? A month later, the court hearing was held. It was short and painless, at least from a legal point of view. Finley came in wearing a hat that hid his head. His hair had started to grow back, but it was still very short and uneven. He didn't even look in my direction when he entered the courtroom. He sat up straight, looking only at the judge. Dexter sat next to him, occasionally giving me cold looks. The property was divided as it was stated in the documents. The house to me, half the money to him. 38 years of marriage summarized in 20 minutes. When the judge banged the gavel, declaring us officially divorced, I felt nothing but fatigue. "How are you?" I asked, trying to sound calm. "Good," he replied, not looking at me. "I found an apartment near the park." That's good." I didn't know what else to say. "It's healing." He finally looked at me, but his eyes were empty. "We have nothing more to talk about, Vera." And he walked away, along with Dexter, without looking back. I stood in the middle of the courtroom corridor, feeling the stares of people. The woman who made her husband bald. The story that had been discussed at every dinner table in Sedona for the past month. When I returned home, now officially just my home, I began to sort through Finley's things that he had left behind. Most of his clothes had already been taken away, but there were little things left. Books he had read, tools in the garage, old photo albums. What to do with them? Throw them away? Give them to him? Leave them as painful reminders? I started with the books, putting them in boxes. Then I moved on to the tools. And finally, to the photos. Hundreds of pictures of our life together. Young Finley with Dexter in his arms. Finley and I at a picnic near the Red Rocks. Family vacations, Christmas holidays. 38 years of happiness that I destroyed in a single moment of anger-blinded madness. The weeks dragged on slowly. I finally returned to work, although the atmosphere in the store had changed. There were fewer customers. Those who came in often asked to be served by Brooke, not me. The shop owner reduced my hours, explaining it as a seasonal slump, but I knew the real reason. The neighbors were divided into two camps. Some, like Mrs. Patterson, avoided me outright. Others, like old Mr. Wilson, on the other hand, began to visit more often, bringing homemade cakes and inviting me to tea. "Don't worry, dear," his wife would say. "We all make mistakes. Who doesn't?" But there were also those who openly condemned me. Once, in a supermarket, I heard a woman behind me say to her friend, "This is the same woman who made her husband bald. Can you imagine? And all because he was dating his own granddaughter. What a crazy woman." I walked out of the store, leaving my full basket in the middle of the aisle. From that day on, I went shopping in a neighboring town where no one knew me. The worst part was that I completely lost contact with Willow. No photos, no calls, no letters. It was like she was just erased from my life. I tried to contact Dexter, left messages on his answering machine, sent letters to their new address in Phoenix. No response. Finally, 3 months after the divorce, I decided to call Finley. His voice sounded distant but not hostile. "What do you want, Vera?" "To talk about Willow," I replied. "Please, Finley. I know I made a terrible mistake. I paid for it. But don't take my granddaughter away from me. Just let me see her once in a while." A long pause. Then, "It's not my decision. It's Dexter and Zoe's decision. But you can talk to them. They'll listen to you." "And what am I supposed to tell them? That you're not dangerous anymore? That you wouldn't do something just as horrible to Willow if she made you angry?" "I would never hurt her." My voice was trembling. "You know that, Finley." "I used to think I knew you, Faith," he said quietly. After that conversation, I fell into a deep depression. For weeks, I barely left the house, didn't answer the phone, and barely ate. If it wasn't for Brooke, who regularly came over and forced me to eat something. I don't know if I would have survived that time. One day, about 6 months after the divorce, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, not really expecting to see anyone but Brooke. "Son," I whispered, barely holding back my tears. "Mom," he nodded. He didn't hug me or smile, but at least he spoke. We sat down in the living room like strangers. Dexter looked around as if looking for a change. "It's the same here," he finally said. "Yeah," I agreed. There was no point in changing anything. "Zoe sent me," he said bluntly. "She's really worried about Willow. The child asks about you. He remembers his grandmother who grew beautiful flowers." My heart leapt. "She remembers me?" "Of course," Dexter sighed. "She's only 10. She doesn't understand why she can't see you anymore." "What? What did you tell her?" "That you're sick. That you needed time to heal." I nodded. "But she keeps asking," Dexter continued. "And Zoe thinks, we think that maybe short supervised visits might be helpful. For Willow." "Visits," I repeated, not believing my ears. "You'll let me see Willow?" "On our terms." He looked me straight in the eye. "Only when Zoe and I are present. And only for an hour or two, no more." "Of course," I agreed hastily. "Whatever you say. When?" "Next Sunday, at noon. You know the address." He stood up, ready to go. "Dexter," I started, but he interrupted me. "Don't, Mom. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for Willow. And it doesn't mean I've forgiven you, or that I ever will." And he walked away, leaving me with a mixture of joy and pain. I will see Willow, but my own son, my child, will never look at me with love again. The next Sunday, I woke up at dawn, even though the meeting was still many hours away. I bought some new clothes, went to the hairdresser for the first time in a long time, and even got my nails done. She wanted to look her best for Willow. Their house in Phoenix was bigger and more modern than I expected. A neat yard, a pool in the backyard, a playground. Zoe met me at the door, cold and formal. "Willow is waiting in the living room," she said. "Remember, no more than 2 hours, and no talking about what happened." I nodded. Of course, I wasn't going to tell a 10-year-old how I tried to make her grandfather bald. Willow was sitting on the couch, flipping through a book. When I walked in, she looked up and a big smile lit up her face. "Grandma!" She ran up to me and hugged me. I hugged her back, feeling tears streaming down my cheeks. "No, dear, I'm better now. Much better." We spent 2 hours talking about her school, her new friends, her ballet classes, which she really loved as it turned out. She showed me her drawings and told me about the cat they got. Dexter sat in the corner of the room watching us. Zoe came in and out, never leaving us alone for more than a few minutes. When it was time to say goodbye, Willow hugged me tightly. "Will you come again, Grandma?" I looked at Dexter. He nodded almost imperceptibly. "Yes, sweetheart," I replied. This was the beginning of a new tradition. Once a month, I would come to Phoenix and spend 2 hours with Willow. Sometimes we baked cookies, sometimes we painted, sometimes we just talked. Gradually, the ice between me and Dexter began to melt, not to complete reconciliation, but at least to polite tolerance. Zoe remained aloof, but no longer looked at me with outright hostility. I never saw Finley again. He always found reasons not to be home during my visits. According to Dexter, he was now dating a woman named Audrey, a colleague from his new job. I didn't know whether to be happy for him or to mourn the ultimate loss of our relationship. Life in Sedona was gradually getting better. People began to forget about the scandal, or at least stop discussing it in front of me. I went back to work full-time, although at a different flower shop on the other side of town. Brooke was still my best friend, and now I accepted her invitations to dinner or movies more often. The house seemed too big for one person, and I often thought about selling it and moving closer to Phoenix, closer to Willow. But something kept me in Sedona. Maybe it was memories. Perhaps the hope that one day Finley would look at Red Rocks and remember how we dreamed of this house, of our future together. A year after our divorce, on Willow's birthday, I came to Phoenix with a special gift a herbarium album and a small set of tools for drying flowers. Willow was thrilled. We spent the whole day collecting flowers in the park and learning how to dry them properly. Even Zoe seemed impressed with my patience and attention to detail. When it was time to go home, Dexter walked me to the car. "Thank you," he said, sounding warm for the first time in a long time. "Willow really liked the gift." "I'm glad," I replied. "She's a great kid, Dexter. You and Zoe are doing a great job raising her." He nodded, accepting the compliment. "Dad asked about you," he said suddenly. My heart leapt. "And what did you tell him?" "The truth. That you seem better, calmer. That Willow loves your visits. Finley, is he happy? With this woman, Audrey?" Dexter hesitated. "They're not together anymore. Not for months. But he's fine. He's working on his radios. His hair's grown back." I nodded, not sure what to say. Part of me wanted to ask if there was a chance for reconciliation, but I knew the answer. "Tell him. Tell him I hope he finds happiness." Dexter nodded and gently squeezed my hand as he said goodbye. It was the first physical contact between us in a long year. As I drove back to Sedona, I thought about how much everything had changed. A year ago, I had lost everything: my husband, my son, my granddaughter, my reputation, even my job. Now something has started to come back. Not everything, and not the way it was before, but something. Small steps towards a new life. At home, I went to the window overlooking the red rocks. They were as majestic and unchanged as ever. How long had they been standing there? Millions of years. And how long will they stand after I am gone? Millions of years. My problems, my pain and losses were so small compared to these ancient giants. I picked up a photo from the shelf, the only one I had left in a visible place. It showed Finley and me in front of those same red rocks, young, in love, with our whole lives ahead of us. I didn't know what was waiting for me next, whether Dexter would ever truly forgive me, whether I would ever be able to be a real grandmother to Willow, without supervision and restrictions, whether Finley would ever be able to look at me without pain and disgust in his eyes. But I knew I would go on living, day by day, step by step, building a new life out of the wreckage of the old one. And maybe one day I will be able to forgive myself for what I did. Because life goes on, even when it seems that your whole world has fallen to pieces. Even then, I put the photo back on the shelf and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. For one person, for a new beginning.